Hey everybody, Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show here for another edition of Boots on the Ground. And this time we're going to be talking about short-term rentals. And our correspondent in that regard, our Boots on the Ground man, is Tim Hubbard from Rest Methods. And he is an experienced multi-market short-term rental operator. And he's been keeping us up to date on what's been going on. And of course, with all this COVID-19 and concerns about sanitation and travel, and then there's just everything just seems to be changing. We thought it would be a good idea to be paying attention to the space because it's a very, very exciting space. So Tim, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, nice to be back, Russ. Thanks for having me.
So here we are, September of 2020, and the world continues to change. We maybe aren't completely locked down, but we kind of still are. People are maybe, I think, beginning to realize that this is some semblance of a new normal, and they're just refusing to be held down. So people are starting to go about their business in normal ways. At least that's what we're seeing from some other folks. But yet we're still not 100% back to normal. So what's the state of the union in short-term rentals from your perspective at this juncture?
Yeah, well, of course, it's different in every market, just like real estate in general. But in the three markets that I've been in, I mean, we're back to prior year norms almost. We're staying booked. It's just a different guest now. They're more local or within the U.S. But the demand is still there, at least in the markets where I'm at.
And which markets again are you in?
Sacramento, Oklahoma City, and Memphis. So kind of spread out
Yeah.
across the
Okay.
U.S.
Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. Okay. Well, California kind of has a reputation for being a little overbearing when it comes to regulation. Are you
Yeah.
finding California to be much different than the other markets?
Again, it goes back to market by market, but California has done really well for me throughout this whole thing, actually. I mean, the spaces have private entrances, so there's not shared spaces, and people can come in with less worry about COVID and stuff like that than maybe they could at a big hotel. So I think that's helped a little bit. But yeah, the regulations there haven't seemed to impact it more than they have anywhere else for me in the U.S. So.
Okay. So occupancies are there, the numbers are there. Seeing any changes in pricing?
Yeah, I mean, during the height of things, we definitely lowered our prices, and that created a whole bunch of challenges. There were lots of parties and things like that really everyone with short-term rentals probably experienced from in some way or another. And Airbnb's seen that as well, and they implemented some policies recently, which I think are great. As of now, if unless you're over 25, you're only allowed to make reservations if you have, I think, 2 positive reviews, and there's a couple other stipulations in there. So they've helped with that, and it's been great. There's really 6 weeks or so where we're kind of figuring that out, but I think most of that's hopefully behind us now. So that's good news.
Okay. Okay. So operationally pretty good. And then Airbnb giving you a little bit of support in regard to making sure that you have responsible or more responsible tenants. So, and
Hmm.
it's nice,
Hmm.
I was a young person once. I know that's hard to imagine, but a long, long time ago, I was a young person. It used to bother me because I felt like I was a fairly responsible young person. And yet, because of my age, I was deemed to be irresponsible. And there was no
Yeah.
way out of jail. It was like, I just had to age out.
Right.
And at least this, it sounds like they're giving a young
Yeah.
person the opportunity to demonstrate that they are responsible.
Yeah. I think
And
it's like rental cars. I mean, I don't think you can rent a rental car unless you're certain age too. I'm not sure. It's higher, I think. I don't know.
No, it's 25, but you can do it if
25.
you're
Yeah.
younger. I think you either have to post a bigger deposit. Again, it's been a long, long time, but I have kids in that age bracket. Not anymore,
Yeah.
but I mean they've aged out of that too. But I think the youngest used to be able to rent, but he would have to put up a bigger deposit or something.
Yeah.
I don't recall, but anyway, well, so that's pretty positive. Obviously, we're here talking to people that are, more investors than prospective consumers.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
we look at the niche, which is short-term rentals, where you take a nice property in a desirable area, something maybe that you wouldn't even mind owning, certainly something that you would like staying in, that other people would like to stay in, and then you make it available to people to use, for a weekend or whatever, for a weekend getaway as an alternative to a hotel. Of course,
Mhm.
hospitality's been having all kinds of issues, and I think that rather than in a COVID-19 world, rather than be crammed in with a bunch of other people traveling in from all over the world, to be able to have kind of a property that you have to yourself and there's nobody else really there, feels more like a home than staying in a hotel. I see some actual advantages
Yeah. Yeah.
in a world like this. But markets are different, properties are different. Obviously, behaviors have changed. We talk a little bit about just kind of what's changed in terms of your experience, but where do you see, let's start with the biggest risks, and then we'll talk about opportunities. Where do you see the biggest risks as we're sitting here in September of 2020? What are the things that are still have you concerned?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the risks again are going to come down to market by market in this space, anyways. Like you have some cities, for example, throughout the world that actually like close down Airbnb, or Airbnb shut off the ability to book based on that city's regulations. So I think that's a risk. So I think the more strict the market you're in, uh, that's going to be a little riskier. Most of those regulations happen for stays that are less than 30 days. And one of the things that we've seen change is the length of stay for guests coming into the short-term rentals. It's up like 40% base before, like the average length of stay has gone up 40% since after COVID. So people are staying much longer. I think part of that's because a lot of people are working from home too, so they don't have to get back to where they need to go. But um, I would say, yeah, the biggest risk is within the market and the regulations if they were to restrict you from renting at all.
Okay. Well, then I suppose part of your due diligence, and I imagine you teach this to your students, is, how to analyze a particular market and decide
Yeah,
what type of regulations or what type of regulatory environment would be more or less friendly to the type of business you want to operate.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, when we look for new properties and we go through what traditionally makes a good rental, so all the solid fundamentals, but then right after that, the most important next step is looking at the regulations, and not just on the city basis, because these regulations can change on a neighborhood basis, if you're in a historic district or something like that. So you really have to do that part of your due diligence before you get a property if you're planning on turning it into short-term rental. So a big piece.
Okay, well, that's good advice. So let's flip over to the opportunity side. Obviously, whenever there's chaos, there's going to be weak hands, people that got into a business they aren't really good at or don't understand. They didn't do their homework, they didn't get properly trained, and the tough time comes. They don't know how to adjust, and now all of a sudden they're don't wanters. I don't know if you're seeing any of
Yeah.
that, but that's kind of a, just a mainstay of understanding market cycles and where opportunities are. And then, of course, you see political changes. You see with the COVID-19, some jurisdictions are really, I think you could argue, are way overstepping, and then others are taking, kind of a real friendly environment, seeing the opportunity to entice people to come in and be a part of their community. I watched like the governor of South Dakota is like advertising all over the place. Hey, come here, we're free. So I mean, and we saw the same thing happen back in the 2008. We saw that the state of Texas was putting out a lot of ads trying to recruit California business out of the more restrictive California environment, the high tax California environment, to the more business friendly Texas environment. So the states kind of compete with each other a little bit. So from your vantage point, where are you seeing opportunities in terms of maybe inventory being available, or markets maybe that are beginning to change or emerge that you think would be worth taking a look at?
Well, we've seen a lot of people leaving the big dense cities, right? And there were a lot of short-term rentals there, and there still are. But a lot of those operators were using a lease model to where they were leasing a property and subleasing it on Airbnb and making the difference. So we have seen a lot of those operators that had thousands of units go out of business. So I think there's opportunity for just short-term rentals in general because there's less supply out there. now. I think the demand has still stayed pretty strong, but the amount of actual rentals that are out there has dropped. And I know, for example, here in Memphis, there's two operators. I was just talking with a housekeeping company the other day, and like half of her business went away because of these two. They were lease arbitrage operators. But she had half the business now because they went under, unfortunately. So but I don't think the demand has decreased that much in this market. So I think there's some opportunity just being in short-term rentals in general because there's less supply.
Okay, so you've got the people out there that figured out how to do the business without having to really put much capital in, right? They sign a lease, and then they
Right.
turn around and sublease, and they lease long, uh, and then rent out short, and make money
Right.
on that spread. Okay, and so
Hmm.
I suppose in the right environment that makes sense. Of course, at the end of the
Hmm.
day, you don't really own any assets, and
Right.
that's a downside. The plus side is if things turn against you, you can just walk away. And well, I guess you can't really because it's kind of like the WeWork model, right? These people are still
Yeah, you're
obligated for these long-term leases.
right. Right. And you got to think, their margins are lower because the landlord or the actual owner of that property still has to make their cut, so their margins were lower to begin with. So it's been tough for a lot of those operators, I think. And they were also easier to scale, because you didn't have to come down with down payments and things like that. So they were growing and growing and growing really, really quickly, adding, a lot of them dozens or more units a month. So they grew quickly, but it's also more challenging in this current environment. So
Wow. So we're going to put some links down in the show notes below because I know you train people how to do this and you've written special reports for us. So it's in our special reports library at realestateguysradio.com. But we'll
mhm.
put all those links down below so people can, who are just now discovering this and maybe aren't followers of the regular boots on the ground updates for short-term rentals and don't know who you are, can learn a little bit more about that. But coming back to this concept of the inventory, right? If you've got these people who are the ultimate owners that were leasing out, and I look at it more from the WeWork model. You've got these companies that leased out all this space, and they still own the building. And yeah, I mean they can go after WeWork for the broken lease, but at the end of the day, the inventory's still there, and it's kind of
Mhm.
available. Do you
Yeah.
see any opportunities on your side of the fence for that? If inventory is an issue, and these people have inventory, but the operators aren't working anymore, then the inventory's still there. It just needs to have a different operator inserted. Do you see any opportunity at all in that?
I think maybe some of those landlords that understood the model and had given up their properties to these lease arbitrage operators, um, they may be still open to leasing those apartments just with a lot more security. Maybe multiple months down payment or something like that. So, or they're might be open to selling the properties. So if someone came in and maybe had more security for that landlord, maybe they can scoop up a whole bunch of these properties at either some sort of good terms on a lease model or to possibly acquire them if the landlord was looking to offload them. So that could be,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, I'm always looking for what's the opportunity in the chaos, right? The flip side of all
yeah,
the chaos is opportunity, and people are being displaced, disrupted. Ways of doing things are changing. There's going to be good. There's going to be bad. A lot of it is just what you focus on, what you see. You have to see both, right? Sam Zell
mhm,
says his reason for success, or one of his key techniques for success, was to be able to see the upside. He goes, everybody sees the upside. We're all opportunistic entrepreneurs. We're optimists,
right,
right? We go in, we chase the upside. He said my ability that made me unique was my ability to see the downside and still be able to move forward and still navigate. And I just think that's one of the great real estate investment quotes, because there's the
for sure.
one school of thought where people just see sunshine and unicorns and charge full speed ahead and sometimes run into brick walls or off cliffs. And then you've got the other folks that are so busy looking at all the problems they can never do anything because they're
Right.
paralyzed into inaction. So you've got to have kind of a good healthy dose of realism and optimism to be able to move forward. So that's
For
why I like to
sure.
do these boots on the ground,
For
because
sure.
it's one thing, I kind of sit up here in my blue tower, I guess you'd call it, and I look down over and I read the news and I kind of follow what's happening. But when I get a chance to talk to you guys that are in the trenches doing it on a daily basis, especially somebody in multiple markets, then I really feel like I get a chance to get a more real indication of what's going on at the street level. So just let's talk about
Mhm.
optimism right now. I mean, kind of bearish being a 0 or a 1, and optimistic and bullish and feeling great about the future being a 10. Based on where you're at in your space, short-term rentals in the market you're in, where would you put yourself on that continuum scale of 1 to 10?
I mean, so I like to be diversified too. I have long-term rentals also, but in terms of short-term rentals, I mean, of course, I'm buying properties that work as a long-term rental to begin with, so I'm a little less worried about a sudden shift in the short-term rental space, But as far as just adding these properties to make sense to begin with, I mean, I'd say I'm an 8 or a 9, because the demand's still there, and there's still properties out there that make sense, and you can really boost your revenues. So unless something changes, that's how I'm adding more properties right now. So
Yeah, love it.
um,
Okay, well, that's good. I think one of the reasons we started doing this was because we just have so many great relationships, so many people we can be talking to, and we just can't get it all onto the radio show. We do a once a week radio show. It's 52 episodes a year. It's just
yeah.
we can't cover everything. And we have these wonderful conversations, and you read the news and you just think, oh my God, it's the end of the world. There's no opportunity out there. The government's just going to have to print money and give it to people and hope we can hold on till somebody somewhere figures out how to make things normal.
Mhm.
But human beings are just fantastic. Somehow, some way they find a way, and they continue to go about their lives and go about their business. And the first glimmers of hope usually happen at the street level. And so it gratifies me to hear that, you're in an 8 or a 9 on an optimism scale. That's great. And it tells me that there's still a lot of opportunity. Okay, well, we need to wrap this up. So any closing thoughts as you think about the state of the union in the short-term rental space from your perspective that people need to know?
I would just say, as always, if someone's looking to get into the space, really check the market that you're going into and the specific neighborhood to make sure the regulations and things like that aren't going to affect you negatively, and that the property that you get into makes sense as a normal rental to begin with.
Yeah.
Make
Well, I
those
mean, that's what I love
decisions.
about you. You have abundance mentality because, not only have you figured out how to do the business and kind of organized it and systematized it and proven it by actually going out and doing it profitably in multiple markets, but you realize there's so much meat on the bone, if you will, that you're happy to share and you teach.
Yeah,
And I
definitely,
know as a teacher myself, you get smarter by teaching, and it actually makes you
definitely,
better and more accountable. So there's a little bit of
definitely.
self I guess selfishness in it, not really selfishness. I'd call it enlightened self-interest, right? You help other people and you become better yourself. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
well, okay. So we'll put all that information down, as I said, in the show notes so they can get your special report on short-term rentals. They can listen to the previous radio shows that you've done with us, and also find out about how to contact you if anybody is interested in getting trained in how to do this business and learn more about it. But really
Definitely.
appreciate the update again, Tim. It's great
Yeah,
seeing you and talking to you. And my spirit's uplifted to know that on a scale of 1 to 10 on the optimism scale, you're an 8 or a 9. I'm
yeah.
actually getting quite a bit of that lately. And
That's
so
good. Good.
that's a good sign too. So when
Yeah,
people at the street level are feeling good, then that tells me that the tide is starting to turn. So it's all
that's
good.
right. That's right. Well,
All
nice to
right.
see you again, Russ, and thanks for having me on.
No, it's great and we'll do this again soon.
Cool. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. You
Take
take
care.
care. Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye bye.